We are excited to bring you office hours, follow-up boss office hours focused on recruiting and retention. My name is Lee Adkins. I'm the head of growth at Amplified Solutions, and I am joined by Emily Smith, who is the COO of Weimer Group Realty. How are you?
Hi guys, good to see you. I'm good, Lee. How are you doing? Are you staying warm in Atlanta? Did you guys
Uh,
get a cold snap?
Atlanta, we got a snap, but it was a snap. So we
We had
definitely
the
were.
same. I'm in Orlando, so same. We're sitting still in about the 60s, which is cold for us, but our hearts are definitely in Texas right now. I know Lee, you've got some family there, and I've got good friends there, and so if you are in Texas and catching this later, we're thinking about all of you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Definitely. And if you're joining us from Texas, then certainly a lot of love to you guys and your family. So I'm really excited for this topic. And I think there's so much we can cover here, Emily, but I think we want to focus a little bit on recruiting initially, dig a bit into retention, and then definitely take questions. Um, you guys can always drop questions in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to them as we go. So be sure you do that in the Q&A. It's awesome if you guys want to chat or drop a comment in the chat, but if you will use the Q&A, it allows us to say, oh yeah, we answered that one. And that's really, really helpful. So, and then if you answer or post a comment or question on the Facebook, we may get to it later. But Emily and I are pretty good about following up and trying to answer questions best we can through there. So Emily, let's talk at a high level first, just about kind of your overall philosophy, I guess, on recruiting and retention and how you guys do that at your company.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know that recruiting is like the holy grail in our industry these days, right? If you want to grow, you need more people to be able to do it. And so I'm sure there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I need to tune in and find out. And I'll just upfront say, I only know our way, and I'll share everything I can today with you all on that part. And then there are a lot of amazing people in our Follow Boss community that do this differently than we do. So I'm really hoping that they'll chime in during the question answer part, or that they'll chime in later on the chat pages and Facebook too, and help fill in ideas beyond kind of the way that Lee and I would structure this for our group. So just high level, down in Orlando, Florida, we call ourselves a teamerage. So we're a brokerage that operates as a true team, and we're a rainmaker model. So for us, we only look at recruiting when we are looking ahead at our like anticipated need, and we start thinking about that like 6 to 9 months in advance, because it takes time to figure out like, who do I have on my bench, who have I been nurturing relationships with, which we're definitely going to get into that topic today, to bring in, but what is the opportunity that I'm trying to fill first? So the first question I ask myself from a high level is, what is our anticipated need going to look like, and what am I promising to the people that they're coming in? So what need am I trying to fill? And then for us, it's just staying ahead of it and figuring out how to fill that bench. And it's just like working with a lead. So it's having people way down here in your pipeline on your recruiting of just starting relationships and watching them in the business, or if they're newer, or maybe they're like super amazing agents, they've been doing this for 20 years, but you'd really love to partner with them. So you're just building relationships. Then it's that mid-level part of the funnel where maybe you're kind of in some dialogue about what that might look like, or dreaming together. And then of course the like entry part of bringing people in. And so for us, it always starts with, what's our need and what can we promise these people if we're going to bring them in anyway.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And I love that you start with that, because I think what typically happens with a lot of people, and I say this with love, I always caveat that, is that they get overwhelmed and then they're like, oh no, I need somebody else to run these leads, or even as a team, it happens, and whether it's market shifts or that you add a new platform or lead generation solution, and then all of a sudden, that happens. So, and I agree with that completely. I think part of the thing mindset wise to this is that in some sense you should always be recruiting. It doesn't mean you're always adding people on, but the way I like to always just frame it to people is that if you're a team owner or a recruiter or operations person, or if you're going to be in a role doing some recruiting, you really do have to be doing it all the time. And like you said, you're building those relationships. You're not going to call somebody once and they say like, cool, I'll come over. And even if they do, they're probably not somebody that you necessarily want to have. So you're always kind of building those relationships. Something we talked about before, Emily, is that, if you're a team owner or ops or whatever role that is, and you're recruiting, those are your leads. It's not that different than a real estate agent or teamerage working their consumer leads.
No, that's definitely true. The other thing to keep in mind is you want to start with the end in mind of, I want to keep all these people forever too. So you're going to do all this upfront work to nurture these relationships, pull them into, and they may say yes right away. It may take years for them to say yes. But then the other part of that, how do you keep them? And then how do you turn them into your next recruiting machine for your brokerage? So I'm excited to dive into that part of the conversation, and particularly because I think that's the secret sauce in our brokerage. I saw that Dan jumped into the Q&A, and I want to answer his question off the start because I think it's a good question. Dan asked, are we using Follow Up Boss exclusively as our like recruiting place to keep these people organized, or are we using a separate recruiting, our CRM kind of for that? In my world, we're just using Follow Up Boss. I don't have a separate CRM. Follow Up Boss is our only CRM that we're using. And I think Lee and I will get to talking about some solutions for that practically in Follow Up Boss of how we organize versus how Lee might suggest that you organize as well as we
Yeah, and I think honestly we can jump to that now. I think that makes sense. So you want to talk a little bit to how you're using it, and then I'll kind of give some of my kind of quick tips on using it.
Yeah, I would love to. So Lee is, we were talking about this ahead of this webinar. So I already know that Lee is going to have a much more detailed answer for you. For us, the goal is just to get the agents into the CRM to start. So goal number one is if you are a team leader listening, or you're a realtor who has aspirations of growing your team listening, every agent that you work with, every co-op, anybody in the business that you come across, get them into Follow Up Boss or get them into your CRM, and then have an organization system around that. So at the very least, have a stage or have a source or have something that ties all of those people up nicely. So when it comes time to find them or make notes or start an action plan or whatever you want to do to manage those relationships, that you can do that. And then build your systems around it. So practically speaking for us, if we're putting a phone number in MLS for agents to be able to call us, pick a Follow Up Boss number and use a unique Follow Up Boss number and have it tie right into your system so that you know the source. You're going to know it's a realtor calling you or a broker. It's not going to be like a consumer because they can't see that phone number. And then those people are automatically added to your Follow Up Boss. You can answer the call just like you would out of the app. You can take the notes right out of the app. You can set the stage appropriately. And now all of these people are automatically in your phone. So it's having the plan up front of putting all the people out of your phone, et cetera, in, and then creating the next part, which is let's have a system so that you don't have to do the work of getting people out of your phone ever again, because nobody wants to do that more than nobody wants to do it the first time. So you want to have that plan in place.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely agree with all that. The only thing I can really add to that is if you're really doing this at a high level, like if you're going to be consistently kind of recruiting and bringing people on, if you're a small team and you're looking for 1 or 2 people a year, then that's probably fine to just manage it in a note or somewhere that you can remember 2 or 3 people that are kind of your hotter people. That's fine. We're not saying you need a system to recruit all the time. But if you wanted to use Follow Up Boss, the seat that you have already, I'm a big fan of either a stage or just a tag that's really clear. And again, take it back to your consumer Follow Up Boss, agent A prospect, agent B prospect, agent C prospect, and just keep it really simple. Stage is definitely a great way to go. I am a fan of that. Just be mindful that your stages are obviously global to your account, but your other agents are dealing with other agents. So having a stage for agent can make sense. I just caution people not to get into the rabbit hole of now we have a stage for agent and then a stage for vendor. And then now we have a stage for agents that are not on our team that we really like, but go to Whataburger or whatever it is. So just be careful that you don't get carried away with that.
Some of us don't have Whataburger, so thank you for
That's
bragging
right. There's my Texas
that.
coming out. We were talking about Texas.
Our In-N-Out friends too. I have that same complaint,
Fair.
just for the record.
That's fair. But I'm a fan, if you're really going to be recruiting at a high level, of getting a separate Follow Up Boss account, because you can make stages, and the stages I would recommend for that are recruiting not contacted, because you want to dump people in there, whether you're pulling a list or wherever you get said list. Here's a good pro tip. When I was in an operations role, I used to scrape the Supra showings, because those are the agents that are out at least showing properties. So in theory, they've got some business, something's going on. So that's a great way to grab a list of agents. Although I wouldn't bulk email that that list, to be clear, but I would do a recruiting not contacted, a recruiting lead, meaning that you've reached out, but they're still just a lead, recruiting nurture, recruiting hot prospect, and then some, depending on how you operate, like if you hand them off to another team member or whatever, maybe a stage for, sent to Emily, or, in meeting with Jenny now, like it's off my radar, it's, going to her.
And Lee, just for clarity, when you say another follow-up boss, just for our audience, you're just saying if you're a team leader, you're adding a seat, and your
I'm
seat
saying,
is your,
no, I'm
right?
saying
Like,
another
or you're saying a
account.
whole nother.
A whole
Okay.
other account. I mean, get you a 1-seat account so you can modify all the stages to be for recruiting.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because you don't want to have, again, back to the simple stages, you don't want to have all your stages and then a bunch of other recruiting stages for everyone in your team to see necessarily. So
that totally makes sense. For those of you that work in teamerage models or work as like a single agent, like Lee said, you may not need to go to that level. Like you may be able to do what we're doing, which is have the stages work for you or have the tags work for you in the global account and make it work. Again, all of this is going to be like custom sized to the way you're currently operating, and and you can always scale it, because if things are labeled right, put in right, you could always pick up what you do have in your original follow-up boss database and move it to the new seat if you needed to.
Totally. And then in Dan's question, just to kind of wrap that, he did ask about other CRMs. I mean, I think HubSpot still has a free seed and whatever, but we have Follow Boss. We know Follow Boss. Like, I would, if there's a really compelling reason to look at another CRM, I mean, I wouldn't stop that, but let's learn one CRM and live in that one is definitely my overall recommendation. So a couple more quick things, then we'll get to some of the other questions. But Emily, I think you had a really good point about kind of sources of these prospects. Like where are they coming from?
I think it's important to know, right? So whether you're talking about agent recruiting, whether you're talking about a lead, like a consumer lead, you have to know where these people are coming from so that you can easily go, okay, I met these people at this, or where are these people coming from into my database? That's what I was talking about with that phone number. Like if I can assign a follow-up boss number to specific sources, I can easily see at a glance when they're coming in, where they came from, where I originally met them, and or know exactly who I'm talking to right away, because they're easily identified as a realtor or a broker, to stay on topic. So I would highly, highly recommend, if you don't have a follow-up boss number tied to places where agents are calling you already, that might be like just a step one. Like go ahead and grab a Follow Up Boss unique number, make it that. It's going to ring to you directly through your Follow Up Boss app on your phone anyway, and it's going to force you to have that place to leave notes or to be able to add them appropriately and to be able to stage them.
Yeah, I think that's super smart. And then I had a quick list I was just going to share if people are again, really focused on recruiting and finding lists. And I mentioned the Supra, which wasn't in my notes. That was just something I actually did. But like a real estate school list, most of the schools offer, if you're looking for new agents, most of the schools will sell their graduation list or their pass fail list or whatever that is. So that can be a good source. We already mentioned this, but I want to reemphasize co-op agents. I mean, you've already worked with them. Your agent can speak to, hey, this person was great. Don't want to jump the gun, but when we get into retention, this also kind of plays, when other agents see that your agents are happy and well-fed and fun to work with, that's a huge source of more of an inbound prospect on that. Then obviously there's the agent production level softwares like Market View Broker, or I always want to say Broker Metrics, or even some MLSs you can pull some of that info from. So it's not hard. It's not hard to find these people, but you have to have a plan to find them. And then the other thing, which is honestly how I got into the business, and Emily, I don't think we've even had this conversation. If you're willing to take on new agents, like really new, like go get your license, the job boards are a great, I got my job. I got into the business. This will show my age a little bit. It was a monster.com ad on be a real estate agent. And I was like, cool, I'll go to their little seminar on how to be a real estate agent. and then you get your license and you affiliate, with that brokerage. So,
I kind of love that you found a monster.com ad. I don't know, that feels
does
like
that,
a
does that really
small
surprise
tidbit
you?
I'm going to tuck away for future reference, Lee.
It
That's
can't
awesome.
surprise you too much.
I think there are two sides to this conversation, right? We have the where do I go find these people side of the conversation, which Lee's given some really good examples, and I've got a couple more I'd like to give you. But the other side of it, and I'm seeing this show up in the Q&A, so we're going to get here, I promise, is how do I keep my own people from being recruited away, right? Because if you're talking about wanting to do this on this side, that's the other side. So we will get there, I promise, because I've seen some really good things show up in the chat on that. Lee, I love your idea about co-op agents. Generally speaking, working with somebody on the other side of the table, even like watching for, we call it talent, right? And this, I hate that word. I wish we had a better one, but watching for people that are high energy, align with your vision, align with your culture, align with how you want to serve your clients at a high level. And then just building that relationship with them. So when you have opportunity, they may be the next willing to join the seat, right? So there's that piece. It's also coaching the newbies that are on the other side of the table. So we were all new once. All of us had to start somewhere. Some of us started on monster.com apparently, but we all started somewhere. And point being, if you can be the agent on the other side that educates, trains, helps, brings up the mastery level for both sides, that agent will be grateful if you approach that the right way and in the kind way, but B, when it's time to build your team, you're already coaching, you're already training and helping. And I'm not saying cross any broker lines, like I'm just saying like helping and generally pulling the level of mastery up. That agent will be more loyal or more thoughtful about joining something that you may be offering because you've already shown the value that you're going to start to add to their business before there's no obligation for you to do that. And so we train our agents on the team to coach, love, help, serve, be there on the other side for the co-op agent, no matter how experienced, no matter how many years in this business that they have been, knowing that that makes a really, really big difference. I'd like to add to the list too, that if you're not going to, and I know COVID has put a little bit of a dent in this, but networking events with like other top producers, if you're really like, I would like to attract other like top producers who are already really producing, you have to get into their orbit. So you have to actually be like in a space with them. Locally, we have a community. It's put together by like a real producer community, which is like a magazine. I know they're in lots of cities around the country. They tend to put on events. Vendor partners that are really good at throwing events that people actually show up to, and whether that be virtually or in person, but just getting into those spaces without recruiting in mind, with relationship building in mind, and listening to their problems, helping them solve their problems, coming from contribution from the start in that world, rather than being like, I'm on the lookout for my next person. Like that is the goal if you're way out here. But the short-term goal is build the relationship, solve the problems, create the connection so that next time they have a problem to solve, they're like, you know what, I should call Lee because Lee gave me a really good idea last time I ran into him. Let me see if Lee knows what to do about that. And then before you know it, that rapport just keeps building. And again, you're showing the value of what your team and you can offer ahead of them even, having signed up for the benefit of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And that reminds me of one of my bullets that I somehow skipped, which is, and I want to be really careful and really clear saying this, potentially being involved, and it can be any sort of volunteer, but at an association, obviously you're not supposed to overtly recruit and you should not do that.
No.
However, you're in the presence of a lot of other agents, especially, usually some who are further along or higher up than you, and some of whom are newer to the business. So I really hesitated to even mention this, but it just building those relationships will get you. And I know some people have strong feelings about associations and whatnot, but for my personal career and myself personally, being involved in the association has done a lot of great things for me. Just agent relationship wise, it may just be that I know the broker at this office, or I know, the COO at that company or whatnot, but similar to the networking thing, like you said, just being out around vendors and other agents and other people, and also vendors, other people like that who have other agents they work with who are great, who may be saying like, hey, I'm having a tough time, or hey, I'm really love this part of the business, but not this part. And that's one more thing. And then we'll get to some of these questions. And I want to make sure we get into retention. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions as we get that rolling. But one other thing I think that we didn't quite mention, but I think we're kind of dancing around with all these, making it clear that you're open to talking to other people. It doesn't have to be like we're hiring or we're recruiting, but just making it known that you're always looking for good agents, whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, I think that that is a misstep. And I think there's lots of fun ways to say it on even on like social media. Like every time we hire someone, we use the phrase "here we grow again." Is just like it's a way of saying like we hired without saying we hired. It's cute. But it's a nod that we're still growing, and it's a nod that there's still space. Even though it looks like we just hired the seat, there's still space, and it shows our public community. It shows the other agents that are in our orbit that we're growing and successful. The other piece of that puzzle, and this kind of leans into the retention piece, is as a team leader or as a partner or as someone that just has one agent next to them, you ought to be their biggest cheerleader publicly. It's one thing to say something behind the scenes to someone and say, gosh, Lee, you're so amazing at how you serve your clients. It's a whole nother thing to go out on Facebook and tell that story and say, I just have to throw this out there, and you're probably tired of hearing me brag about my team, but Lee is amazing. Have you seen how he takes care of his clients? Or if you have I'm all about systems, because systematizing things in your world as an agent, the more plates that you're spinning, the easier things will be to remember to do. So if you have a closing and you post about your experience with that client and you say, we got, X amount over and we did this, and you make it all about the client. Team leaders, watch for those posts, and your job is to comment, share, accolade, like be a part of the celebration so that those agents feel supported and they feel like it's seen. They're not the only ones that are going to see those comments and feel celebrated. Their sphere is going to see those comments. The people in their world are going to go, oh man, that person that they work with or for, depending on the situation, is amazing, because look, they're paying attention, number one, because how often do we hear that? Like team leaders are checked out, or, so they're paying attention. They care about this, builds culture and builds trust. And then other agents in the market are watching. They are watching to see like, wow, that broker or that team leader or that person, they take the time to even comment on their agent's closing posts. Like amazing. And it's such a little thing, but it's systematized somewhat. And so I will give away our secret on this just a little bit. The comments need to be real and authentic. So you don't say things you don't mean. So there's system number one. System number two is have your agent standardize a hashtag that they all use for their closing posts. And then if you do that, I can hop on Instagram, I can hop on Facebook at any given time. I can search that hashtag and I can very quickly find the posts that I want to find. And I'm COO of our brokerage, so I'm not an agent, but I view it as part of my job to support our agents, support their closings and their successes, because ultimately it leads to better culture, better success for the team, and recruiting. Really, like it's all part of like that long-sighted thought process.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you mentioned that, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I do want to plug for. I think it was our last session we did for hiring, so like staff and management. And if anybody wants, I'm going to leave one quick tip and then refer you back to that video. If you're going to be doing this recruiting and spending this time on this and making these things happen, please be sure you have at least a skeleton onboarding plan in place so that when you finally get the person, they can actually get on your website and get a key to the office and whatever all those things are. And we went through that in pretty great detail on the last session. And you guys have a next level onboarding process. Could you at least tell us about what you do the day before or the prior to the onboarding session, along with kind of what you just said?
And like the 10-second add to what Lee said before I tell you what we do is have a plan for your new agents and have a plan for your experienced agents. It's different. Your experienced agents need to learn your technology and like how to turn in a file, where do I find whatever the resources are. Your newbies need they got the how to get out of jail, real estate school, but now they need to know how to do real estate. So when we talk about like who are you recruiting and why, you have to have your plans in place for both versions of agents depending on what you're bringing in. It is much easier to get a newbie to sign on if you can offer training and help and mentoring, but it's a lot of upfront work. And you just, if you're committed to that, the loyalty, the culture, the et cetera can grow. If you're bringing in a experienced agent out of the gate, they need you to be organized on day one to help them keep the ball rolling so that they don't experience that like bump in their business. So what we do if we're bringing in, whether it's newbie or not, I want them to feel a part of the team from like day -1. So we say, yes, this is great. I send out an email with like all of the pre-information of what's next. So you're training your entire organization to think in what's next, always on everything, whether it's clients or agents or staff or whoever. So we send out here's what's going to happen next. I want you to come to team meeting on this date and you're going to meet people. And in team meeting, we're going to need you to give a 30-second spiel about yourself because we don't want them taken off guard. We have ordered a polo. We've ordered a name tag. Here's when it's going to arrive. Like we're giving them the pieces of what's next. And then the day before they officially start, I send our runner to their house to drop off on their front porch, like a little welcome gift. And it's a branded gift for us that has all kinds of things in it for them to be like to start on the team. It gives them like their t-shirts and their polos and their business cards if I have their headshot up front, like all of the things that an agent would need, and a couple of little celebratory kinds of things too. So it's like, yay, you've joined the team, with a handwritten note. It will not matter if we have 500 agents or 2. You can do something like that, make people feel like they are wanted from the first day before they even hit your first activity with them.
Yeah, so many people talk maybe too much about culture, but that's how you start a great culture. You start it from the day before that they come into the office, or really during the interview process. But that's a whole
expectation. Yeah, right. You're beating expectations. That's all it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's hit a couple of these questions and then pivot into retention. I wanted to do it right there, but I want to answer some of these questions we've got. So Melanie has a really, really, really great question here that says the biggest challenge is that the brokerage, it seems like their owner names are on the brokerage, and they have a team approach. So obviously a bit like what you guys, and somebody said any strategies for that, especially since obviously you guys are Weimer Group Realty, which is Jenny Weimer.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely experienced that. And if you don't know Melanie runs a beautiful brokerage out of Toledo, Ohio, Lambertville, Michigan, right over the lines, and with her husband. And I've been super impressed at the branding that they've been pulling off. So kudos to you, Melanie, for what you're building, because it's awesome. But I think we actually rely on the name. So we pitch it as a benefit, not something to be scared of. And I'm just unapologetic about it because the success and the track record helps. So if I can say like, listen, in the community has learned to trust our name and our brand, and you coming in are going to get to add your mark to that name and to that brand. But we are so much more powerful together than we are apart. So as we grow and our successes grow, the brand awareness grows, but you only have a piece of that pie as an agent. So even if you're an unbelievable agent and doing an unbelievable business, like I have an agent that did like a $30 million business on our team last year. Like that's 30 million of our 283 million. So our $283 million pie with our branding, with our efforts, with our logo, with our stuff goes a lot farther than just that third. And that $30 million pie is amazing. Like there's nothing wrong with that part. It's just, we are truly stronger as a whole than we are trying to segment things into individual branding pieces. The name piece too is a little bit tricky. Everyone says, what's a Weimer? I don't think people even know that it's a last name. Like they do and don't. It just depends on what branding they've run into. And so that part for us is the thing. But if you are a person that built a brand already and it's strong and you're trying to recruit, like Melanie's talking about, and I know Meg Schaefer was in the Q&A with a similar question. It's stronger together than apart, and teaching your team to talk that way behind the curtain of, guys, we are stronger together than apart, and using your team meetings or using your spaces to keep having that conversation. You can't just do it at recruiting and be done. You have to keep having it so that the team talks about it too. And what's fun now is I'll see it show up in posts from my agents. So they'll write something and they'll be like, well, because I'm stronger on the team than apart, like the words come back in the posts. So you as a leader have to keep training it once you do retain, but
Yeah, that's perfect. And think about it.
really,
I don't want to mention any specific names, but I mean, think about some of the big brokerages out there. I mean, they're people's names. I mean, I'll just use Keller Williams as an example because that's
right.
really easy. But I mean, but I understand the point and the concern, and certainly we run into that. So let's pivot a little bit to Meg's question, which is, you know, in a market where the team model isn't really is not that common, and so people are kind of like, why would I join this group, you know, this team?
I think it, to answer that question, it all comes back to what value are you adding to their business. So you have to know at a glance, and you have to be able to very quickly define what it is that you offer. So if I'm sitting in an appointment with somebody and they're like, why should I join this team? And I have to give them a 45-minute explanation of why I don't know my own value. Like I have to be able to succinctly say, listen, the agents on my team are able to create their own goals, but create sustainability within those goals. They can make the amount of money they're hoping to make because we have proven systems. We know how to do this. We have the support. Like I can succinctly sell what we are able to offer to a teammate in maybe 2 minutes. And I can cater it to what I can hear that they need. And that's just sales somewhat. But I really think it's pitching the together. It's what do you have behind the scenes to help that agent with support? So, do you have transaction managers? Do you have marketing behind the scenes? Do you have ISA that's going to help support this business that they are saying that they want to do? So, when people decide they need a change in their world, people don't choose change just for fun typically. Like they have decided there's something
Real
behind
estate
why
people,
they
really?
right. I know. Well, some of us choose change just for fun because we like to rebuild systems. I think we could probably identify. I'm like, let's tear that down and figure out how to rebuild it. That's maybe like trauma. I don't know. But all that to say, people come to you because there's either a pain point or what you have looks so much better than what they do. And so you just have to know your value and you have to be able to talk about it easily with them in a way that's going to show them how it's actually going to benefit them, their business, their life. And that is where I think the power of the team for us comes into play.
Well, and I want to reiterate something that you said, so many great things in there, something you kind of breezed past that I want to just go a little deeper into. And that is, once again, same as the consumer lead on the real estate side, listen to their pain points, like ask them about their business. That's the best way of coming up with what to say, what pain point you can solve for them. If they're like, oh, this paperwork is terrible, great, we've got a transaction coordination team. Once you go under contract, you make the handoff, you're back out the door. Now, again, that's got to happen. You can't just say we have that and then it's not happening or it's not smooth or whatever. But, I think just listening to those pain points is really key to be able to get to their motivation and what they really need. And you know what? Sometimes that may also eliminate them, which is also good. I think we focus way too much in this business about like winning and it's got to be the right person. To people like you and me, Emily, I always say it's what not to do. I know a
Yeah.
whole lot about what not to do. I can't tell you exactly what to do, but I can tell you a lot of things that you should definitely not do.
Yeah. The other piece of that too is don't overpromise on a recruit. So if you do not have a system set up or you do not have the technology that they actually need and they say yes and they move over and they realize you can't deliver on the things that you've promised, you've created a whole nother set of holes and you've created distrust for recruiting in general because salespeople talk to each other. Communities are small. Like I live in Orlando and we're a massive market and it's still very small when you get down to who's talking to who. And so you just want to be careful to always speak truthfully about where you're at. It's not that you can't be positive or spin the good parts, but you want to be truthful about your shortcomings and you want to be truthful about what you can help them with to move that part of their business forward. And then you want to over deliver on all of that. So do the work. If you're like, man, we're still small and my dreams are to be big, do the work now on the systems, do the work now on the operational pieces so that you are ready to put somebody in a seat and feel confident that they could get started and know what's next.
I'm so glad you said that. I had a call with somebody recently who was sort of new to the business, not new, but we're talking about some of those things like, I want to build a big team. What's this all going to look like? And I was like, this is the time to get your stuff in writing, get it down, because once it takes off, it's really hard to make that time to step back and do it. Now you're going to tweak it. Like it's not going to work a year from now, but
Yep.
you're going to be tweaking it instead of staring at a blank page. So Dan had another great tactical question, just asking about the separate number for agents. Is that a team inbox? Like, how did you do that?
So yes, it's a team inbox for us, just so that we can tell immediately where it's coming
Yeah.
from, and they kind of live and are managed within
Because you
that
can
box.
name it, agent inbound calls or agent calls on
Whatever you
listings or
want.
whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. So
Yep. Yep.
cool.
I
All right,
appreciate
great.
that, Dan. That's really good.
Let's try to
Um,
rapid fire through some of these because I really want to get into retention with you because you guys are that's a strong point for sure.
let's do it.
Chrissy said peerreputation.com is a great platform for with the recruiting section that allows users to view potential recruits based on volume and peer reputation rankings from other agents. I have never heard of that, which
I was just going to say that. So thank you, Chrissy, because I need
apparently I don't
to
get
know
out
that.
much. I'll drop it in the chat. Well, I think everybody can see it in the Q&A, but I'll drop it in the chat just to keep it simple. That was awesome, Chrissy. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
And then other brokers will try to recruit our agents from a good experience. I'm not sure if that's from or for.
That's from Mark. Let's save that because that is all about the retention piece.
Okay.
And
right.
so we'll definitely get into that because I'm super passionate about that.
Cool. And then Tara asked about things to ensure they're a good candidate.
So that is process for us. So number one, we have a standard, right? So I've talked about this in multiple webinars. Eventually, you guys are going to get tired of hearing about my team and what we do, but we call ourselves WeMates, and WeMates all stands for kind of our culture code. So for us, like when I'm talking to somebody, I'm looking and going, are they going to talk in we and not I, or can I train them to speak in we and not I? Are they going to fit into this team model with us? That's our core we. And then M is masters of our craft, accountable for our actions, teachable spirits, elevates other, solution based. So I'm looking for those qualities. And so Lee and I in our last talk talked a lot about what are the questions you could ask somebody at the table during an actual interview. But I'm asking questions trying to identify, like, are they going to be this type of person in our organization and make more so to our clients? So I look at leadership as like, we're recruiting agents, we're coaching agents, we're loving on serving, taking care of agents so that they will pick up all of those same words, skills, time, effort, et cetera, and do that for their clients, which will ultimately grow the whole picture for everybody. But for us, I do that. The second piece is I actually invite teammates to help with the interview process. So if we're interviewing an agent, it's not just a one and done, like, hey, thanks for dropping in, we're going to do this. It's we're going to do this, and then I need you to actually have a couple of conversations. And I pitch it the opposite way, like, hey, this is great, they don't actually let me make these calls by myself. Like, I like you to talk to other people on the team, and I will sell our agents as smarter, better than I am. And I pitch it like, this is your chance to pick the brains of agents on our team and get a real picture of what it looks like to be a WeMark Group agent. And I'll give you a roster with 10 or so people, and you pick who you want to call on the roster. Because I want to have so much confidence in my team. Well, I do have confidence in my team that they literally could call any. We have a roster of 68 people total. I've handpicked the 10 that I know are going to be able to sell the experience and handle that phone call, right? But at the same time, I want them to have the confidence that they're like, man, I could call 10 people on the team and have this conversation. And I say, please call 2 or 3, let me know when you have, and then we can have another conversation. And then I'm checking in with those agents. Did they call you? Did you get anything? Or the agents know at this point, like, they have to tell me, like, hey, so-and-so called me, had a good conversation, or I don't know about this one. This one didn't feel right, or doesn't feel like. And there have been times that I've thought somebody would be a good fit and we didn't hire based on the fact that a couple of agents or a couple of staff, because you can include staff or agents, said, I don't know, I'm seeing red flags here. And the trust that is built with teammates when you award them the opportunity to get to help make these decisions is massive. And if you say, okay, well, I thought it was a yes, but you said it's a no, so we're not going to hire, they're like, oh my gosh, my opinion matters here. Like, they are so much more tied into what you're trying to do. So for us, it's the culture. Do they fit this? Can they be successful here? Do they have the drive? Do they have the grit? Do they have the energy and the time and the resources to commit to what we're offering? And then on the other side, does the team feel like they are a good fit? So Tara, those are the two big pieces that I'm kind of looking for when we're interviewing.
Yeah, those are great. And I'm going to give an even more tactical kind of add to that, where under, a lot of people talk about like, oh, I'm going to do a disc profile, or I'm going to do a Myers-Briggs, or whatever that is. And I just wanted to mention the idea that not only is that good data to look at, but what you're looking at in that case is, are they following instructions? How quickly do they return it? Do they follow up to make sure you got it? Did they actually attach the document when they sent it to you? Like, there's a lot of nuance in the action this person is taking and interacting with you that I think a lot of us get wrapped up in, like, oh, I got their disc and they're a 96D. And it's like, right, but did they send you a nice note saying, I completed my disc. Thank you. I learned a lot about myself. That was really interesting, versus like, here it is, or forgetting to
Right.
attach it or whatever.
Well, and the way they respond to you is how they're going to respond to their clients. So keep in mind, like what you're seeing in the interaction, in the longer the interaction goes on, because it changes. At first, you may have the nice, like, paragraphs and nicely written. And then the longer it goes on, the more you're going to see how they're really going to carry communication with even like a client or with other staff. And so we watch for those things too. That's a really good point, Lee. I gave this away in the last interview that we did, but we put people through a DISC test on purpose. And I purposely just give them the link and say, please take this test and email us the results, because I'm looking to see, like, can they click a link? Can they figure out how to make a login? Can they figure out how to take the test and get me the result? Because if they have to come back with questions, that's fine. It just tells me a little bit about that agent that I'm talking to and what their needs are going to be technologically. Or can they do this, and do they have a lot to say about the result, or can they do this and they just fired it over without extra verbiage of saying, hey, here's the thing I just sent you? Because again, that's how they're going to guide their clients more than likely behind the scenes. So just watching for those cues, for lack of a better way of saying it. The other thing worth saying here that we said off the beginning is, try to not hire when you have like need, like you're like drowning, right? So again, like you as a leader need to look ahead and go, I anticipate having a lot of leads that I'm going to need help with. Or for those of you that are not Rainmaker model, like maybe you have time to recruit all the time. So just, it's the process piece that my brain keeps landing back on as we talk about this.
Totally. And so we could probably talk about recruiting for literally like the next 15 sessions, and we won't do that to you guys, although maybe we'll circle back if there's interest. But I want to get down to retention. It was funny because I just want to be real honest about this. When I first reached out to you about the session, we had plans to do it. Then we picked the topic. Your immediate response was like, I don't know about recruiting, but I could definitely speak to retention, which I think you just documented that you could speak to recruiting. But retention is such a big part of your guys' business. And first off, I'd like to give you a minute just to tell a little bit about maybe your philosophy on retention, and then we'll certainly get into some strategies and tactics. But
Yep.
Like, how do you guys do that at your company?
So I told you earlier, we are 68 people big. We've grown very fast in the last like 2 years. So we hovered around 40, 45 for a long time. And then we hit this need for exponential growth just because of the amount of leads we were generating, which is a really unbelievable, like, blessed problem to have. So we'll just start with that. But from the very, very start, from day one, Jenny Weimer, who's team leader of Weimer Group Realty's philosophy was bring in really good people and then treat them incredibly well and treat them to teach their clients incredibly well, and then keep everybody on the bus as long as possible, so to speak. Because if you can learn to think about your own business with the umbrella that you have, being able to expand and continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger, no matter what level of talent you're bringing in around you, the whole thing has the ability to grow. And I'll just be blunt. I see a lot of team leaders, and I actually talk to a lot of team leaders that are scared of real talent. They're scared of people who are more successful than they are. They're scared, or on paper look more. We're all human. Like, I think we forget these things sometimes. Like, we really are all humans, just trying to figure this out as we go. But we get scared of extra talent. We get scared of having to, like, okay, well, I never grew my business that big, but this agent wants to do this thing, and we get freaked out about that. So just take a deep breath and agree you're going to build with people. You're going to figure it out with people. You are going to have enough grit as a team leader to dig in and be next to people, trying to put the pieces together. I honestly believe, as a team leader or as a COO in my seat, like, it's our job first and foremost to make those promises and then keep them. So as a team leader, I have to stay ahead of technology. I have to stay ahead of what lead generation opportunities are out there. I have to stay ahead of what is going on in the real estate world in general, and then bring that knowledge back to my team and share it so that they are constantly realizing that like the team wants them here, wants them to be a part forever, but B, the team is trying to stay ahead of this curve in real estate for their behalf and with them. So our goal is hire the right people. They need to be cultural fits. They need to want to be on the bus and want to fly the flag of like being a part of the team. And then the goal is really to build with them as long as we can build with them and show them and over time that the umbrella is big enough to keep them on this bus as long as they want to be on it. And that's so much harder done than said, right? So there's the big one. But practically speaking, which is where I think we want to live here, the ways you do that is number one, support and value. You have to constantly be asking, like, how am I showing value to these guys? How am I showing up in their world? If you're a team leader, a lot of your job is to not disrupt their world. Like, you can't just onboard new systems every time you want to. You can't see a shiny object and be like, hey guys, we're going to do this. So it's figuring out, like, how do I support the goals that these guys have and give them the tools and the things that they need to be successful without disrupting the world that they live in so that they can continue to be successful. So it's being strategic about when those things are introduced, or just honestly talking to them about it first. I know a lot of teams that introduce technology and they've never even talked to a single agent to know how that would intersect or play in their business to start. So it's having open dialogues, and then it's teaching constantly in your world. We've already kind of covered this a little bit about what your value is. Like, I will figure out ways to drop into conversations or into our teaching in our team meetings or in one-on-one conversations with people on the phone, little things like, man, I was looking at this new lead source this week, and this is super exciting for you because, so I have a little bit of a formula, which if anybody on my team's watching it now, they know, but like they know because I'm an open book, but it's, what is this thing I'm looking at and how does it benefit the person I'm talking to? And they don't need to know everything, but if we're working on something that like benefits them, why wouldn't we want to tell them about it? So often we work hard, we spend money, we buy tools, we change things, we put people in seats, and we never stop to sort of explain to the people we're doing this for that we're doing it for their benefit and that we've taken on the cost, we've taken on the time, we've taken on the energy on their behalf so their businesses can keep running and going and doing. So you don't do it in like I'm spending all this money on your behalf. Like, you're not poking, you're just sort of gently like reminding, like, it would be really hard to do this without us, guys, because we're doing this for you and we're building all of this on your behalf.
I think that's really important. I used to, when I was in a direct operational role, I used to actually, I don't necessarily recommend this, but it was the right strategy for me at this time with these people. Was I would share the profit and loss. I mean, I wouldn't email it out, but like I would open it in a one-on-one meeting and say, look, like, spending this many thousands of dollars on this and this many thousands of dollars this, and the contract to close person's on staff and me, like, so your percentage that you're paying out of these closings, like, this is what it goes to. What I would always joke, I'd say, like, we're not rolling around in money. Like, look at all these expenses that you're each paying, 1/10 of, or
Right.
1/68 of, or whatever that is. And
Well,
again, I
hopefully
think
you
that,
are all rolling around in money, right? The goal is for everyone on the team.
right.
And that's the other piece of this, just to go there for a second, Lee, is how do you begin to think about every person in your organization? How do you help them think about wealth building? How do you help them think about loving what they do? How do you help them think about what's next in their world? And I don't just mean agents, I mean recruiting the right staff people too, like giving people more money than they can get anywhere else, teaching agents how to go earn more money than they can earn everywhere else, and then giving them the behind the scenes leverage to go do that will keep them loyal, because the money or security piece is big for a lot. Not everyone is motivated by that. So you have to figure out what motivates people too, and then solve those problems. But ultimately, when people are happy and healthy and want to be in the space with you building, they're not able to be recruited. I have a whole army of agents that are unable to be recruited because they can't be swayed by a signing bonus. They can't be swayed by the flashy object. They're you inviting them to lunch and being like, hey, come be a part of whatever the model, there's all kinds, but you can't sway them because they have seen over time that we are willing to do what we say we're going to do. We're going to include their opinions at the table. We're going to value their opinions at the table is the bigger deal. We're going to continually be in dialogue with them over time about the bigger picture of real estate, over what we're trying to do together as a team. And we're going to constantly be accolading what the team is doing together, because we are stronger together than apart. And we create this army of people that want to be stronger together than apart. And then the leverage for us underneath is a lot of what provides that security for us. So our agents only have to do 8 things out of the 100 things that most real estate agents have to do. And that is a topic for another day probably. But they literally will make statements like, I don't know how I would do this without marketing. I don't know how I would do this without our transaction managers who are client care coordinators. Like, I would be lost. But we've also put people in those seats who can really be experts. So the agents have full trust that they couldn't do it better than those guys could. But that takes time. It takes effort. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and build the most amazing culture where everybody wants to stay and be a part. It's a time on task, day after day, doing the right thing. I always say, just make the next right decision in front of you. And you can do hard things. So keep making the next right decision, keep making, do hard things and get there. And then you wake up. I know it's so hard to be patient, Melanie. I just saw your comment show up in the chat. It's super hard to be patient with that, but it will be well worth it. I've been with Jenny only 6 years, which in real estate time is like, we joke it's dog years. So like, it feels like, I don't know, legitly, it feels like 20 years. However, in 6 years, we have grown exponentially, and it's only from like continue, and we make slips all the time, but continuing to just keep taking the steps forward, doing right by people, stabilizing the systems, and then letting the people that are in the business that are happy and healthy and here help us recruit, and being open with them. Hey guys, we need some agents and we're going to need them in the next 6 months. So please be watching. Who are you working with out there that's amazing, that like, we should kind of keep an eye on? Or do you have relationships with somebody that should be in real estate that's not already, that we could build a beginnings with and teach them, like they could be a showing partner, and then they could work up to be a buyer's agent, and then they could eventually work up to have their own business. But let's make a plan for those guys, or start having those conversations early. But turning your crew into a recruiting machine and to be unrecruitable is really at a high level just about serving them really, really well, creating stable systems, stable processes, and then allowing them to see that, man, your umbrella is absolutely as big as they need it to be to thrive and grow in your organization.
Yeah, that's perfect. And while you said that, I just wrote down intentional and have a plan. And I know that sounds too simple for some people, and that's also not some people's kind of go-to.
Yeah.
But one of the things I always say about having a plan is that, and I legitimately mean this very seriously, you literally don't even need a good plan. You just need a plan. Like, it's not going to be good. I'll just tell you right now, the first time you come up with that plan, it is not going to be good.
No.
But you do it, and you're like, oh, like I said before, not going to do that again. Next time we'll do this. And that really, that true, and it's overused, but that water on a rock type of consistently doing this and consistently proving, that benefit, and consistently doing what you say you're going to do, it's literally the only way to do it. And that's why it's so hard, and that there are standout groups of people that are really doing it well, because it is really hard and it takes time. But, if there were a shortcut, we would just give it to you and then send you a big bill. So we have a couple of good questions. I want to try to sort of stay on time, but definitely some good questions here. I think you honestly covered that question. We got a couple of follow-up boss specific. Let's do the anonymous. Let's do the, when team members start producing and have production under their belt, how do you keep them from leaving? You answered that in some sense, but do you have anything specific to add to that?
I think that's a super valid question and a super big fear for lots of team members. So it's probably good to talk about that. Number one, those are the people in your business that you need to have great relationships with. Like, you need to get on their calendar a couple times a year specifically and be asking them questions. What am I not seeing? What would it take for you to go to the next level? How do we help you grow? And they may not want to, right? That's the other, we assume growth for people sometimes, and we can't want things for people that they don't want. So I wouldn't just assume if they all of a sudden start producing at a high level, because in real estate, the rent is due every day. So you have to get up and like do it all over again. And if you had a really great year, you've got to recreate that. And I do have an agent on the team that had a killer year last year that said, I'm actually not sure that I can sustain that again. And I really don't need to or want to. So we've got to listen as leaders to what people actually want for their lives and not assume a path for them that they may or not want. The second piece of that is just be open with them about that part of the process of what's next, how do we get you there. I'm not afraid in a team meeting to talk about, like, I know some of you have probably gotten calls this week about being recruited. If you have any questions about that, please reach out so that they feel like the door is open. We're not scared of it. We're not quiet about it. We're not, because it's happening, whether you want it to or not. And so we're just upfront about it. Our big producers, I'm not afraid to say, like, have you gotten any calls recently? Like, who's trying to talk? Because again, it's like it opens the door, but I have the relationship with them to be able to have those conversations. And so we approach them with growth, but with the question mark of, is that actually what you want? And if it is, we have to commit to helping them get to the next level, no matter what that means. And again, the whole thing comes back down to relationships. And I know there are some brokerages that this relationship thing sounds ridiculous and scary, because it's not how that world runs. It's maybe more based on data or numbers or just like pure number of agents in the system. So that's a whole different side of this piece. But I do believe there's a way to even bring relationships into that world, if you're really strategic about who your staff people are, taking care of those agents and taking care of those people. It doesn't have to be you as the broker or you as the team leader. It's you empowering that next level in your organization. And I will talk about this in every webinar, but I empower every person in our organization to lead from whatever seat they're in. They should always be taking care of every person around them. But if you can really work as a team leader to identify, like, who is it in my mid-level or in my next level that, like, these guys could really take care of these agents and be a part of that part, that will change your business.
And Emily, I know you guys do this, and I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, you do have to create a path for other opportunities. Like, if they're just always going to be only a boots on the ground agent, then right, there's no way to advance even if they wanted it, whether it's a mentor program or if you do like a listing specialist type of model. I mean, there's 100 ways to elevate those people. But I just want to mention, like, to me, it's really important that I love the way you said it. And I know you guys have a mentor program, but just things like that, where you can say, and I agree with you 100%, it's not always all about the money, and it's not always about the production number. A lot of times, especially once you get comfortable like that, it really is more about quality of life, and things like that. So, but yeah, again, you want the short answer, have a conversation with them.
Yep.
So we have a couple of tactical follow-up boss things I definitely want to answer. A, because it's a follow-up boss webinar, and B, because people need help doing this in follow boss. I'll tackle the agent stage thing. So Dan asked again about, if these people are all coming into agent stage, if you were using like one follow boss account for that, how would you kind of move them along the process? And I mentioned a little bit of this earlier. I'd probably, if you want the easiest answer, I'd probably use a tag. I'd do like a recruiting A, a recruiting B, a recruiting C type of deal. And maybe that answers Danielle's question as well about the smart list. Because if you had a smart list that was recruiting A that I haven't called in 45 days or haven't contacted, that's the uber short answer to both the questions. But do you have thoughts on, or can you tell more about how you guys organize?
So we're not really using Follow Boss to that degree because we're not dialing out to these agents. So in my world, we're keeping relationships with them, and then we're being very public about the opportunity we have for our needs. And we're asking our agents to partner with us on it too. And I didn't say this earlier, but it's probably worth saying, coach and teach them that there's enough opportunity and abundance to be had in the organization, that if you bring these people in, it doesn't mean they're getting less of an opportunity. It means the whole thing is growing. So that's massive. Like that's hard to do. And it's a continuous conversation, but getting your agents on that page and then having them post on your behalf, showing that the opportunity is actually available, means all these people you've been developing relationships with happen to run into that hopefully somewhere. So hopefully they're following you on Facebook, or like if you share it on your business page, also share it on your personal. If you could get your staff to share it or your agents to share it too, now you're hitting exponential reach. They're probably friends with some of those people that you're hoping will run into those posts that you're building real relationships with. But the actual follow-up boss system for us, I just want them there so that all communication is logged. If I need to make a task because I'm supposed to reach out to somebody for somebody, I'm going to do like a one-off task through Follow Up Boss. But I'm not, Danielle, to answer your question, using like a smart list to call people through, or that's not our model. We're not dialing and trying to get people. I'll be honest with you, I've had people try to recruit me. I'm not an agent. So I, as the CEO of our brokerage, I'm unlicensed. And what happens is I'm like, you did zero research to know who you were calling. So if you're going to do that and you're going to dial, please, please, please research the people that you're dialing and know, like, have a point besides just here's my pitch for my company I'm trying to give to you. Like, know who it is you're connecting with.
I'm so glad you said that. That was one of the stages I forgot. One of the stages I did in my dedicated Follow Boss for recruiting was like a recruiting research or needs more or checkout or whatever. Because I get the same too. And I am licensed, but I've literally been out of production for 10 years. And I'm
Right.
like, are you just, yeah, I know I had zero production last year. I was doing some other things, but
Right.
it's really
He was
interesting.
on monster.com. Just
Yeah, I
kidding.
was on monster.com looking for, looking for gigs. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys being on. Emily, thank you as always for sharing
Of
an
course.
unbelievable wealth of information. And we'll certainly have you back and do it again soon.
I'm going to hide for a little bit, I think, just so I can catch up on all of the questions that come out of these meetings. But no, I love this. And Lee, thank you too for sharing. I always love getting to hear your side of this too, because I always learn something. Great questions out there in our community. And I really do hope folks in our community will contribute in the chat. If you're listening to this later, pop in the chat and it'll repopulate this video right back in or not the chat, but in the Follow Up Boss chat. Put it in the comments and we can keep the conversation going, because this is something we're all, no matter how big, how small, thinking about. And it would just be good to keep this conversation going in the Facebook group. So don't be shy about
and
chiming
feel
in.
free to tag us. I'm glad you mentioned that. Feel free to tag either of us in those posts or both of us. We're definitely happy to answer there. In fact, it's kind of a great way that we can answer whenever we're there or share information, or now that we've done this and are thinking about other things that we either should have said or want to cover. So yeah, please always do that. And if you're not in the Follow Up Boss success community on Facebook, then you should be, and reply to the webinar email and I'll make sure you get into it.